All right, I think we have a good group here. We can get started now.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the CLAFA Tenant-Based Housing Assistance Committee. My name is Maria Razzo. I'm the chair of the committee, and we'll get started with introductions. I'm going to start with whoever I see next to me on the screen, David Greer.
Thank you, Maria. My name is David Greer. I'm the Director of Communications at CLAFA, and I like to attend these so I get a better understanding what is going on in your neck of the woods, and then I can help communicate that. Like Maria, I will just pass it along and tag Janelle.
Good afternoon. My name is Janelle Beverly. I'm the Policy Director and Research Director at CLAFA. Super excited to have our second tenant-based meeting since joining the crew, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion. It should be really robust. We have a full agenda, and we'll try to keep us as well on target as well. Thank you. So I'm going to pass it off to Joshua Shakur.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua Shakur. I'm a research and policy analyst here at CLAFA, and I'm very excited to see how the discussion goes. I know there's a lot on the agenda today, and I'm going to pass it to Cheryl Burns.
Cheryl,
I think we're having a difficult time hearing you. You might have to dial in. I'll pass it over to Sonia Zaderman.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Sonia Zaderman. I'm the Executive Director of CLAFA. And let's see, I'll pass it to Lillian Harris.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all again. I'm Lillian Harris, Vice President for Leased Housing for New York City Housing Authority, and I'll pass it over to Samuel Thomas.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Sam Thomas with the Strategic Analyst Department here at the Durham Housing Authority in North Carolina. I'll pass it over to Mr. Brandon Crow.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Crow. I'm the new director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program at Minneapolis Public Housing. Kyle Hansen has moved into a new role overseeing policy and strategic initiatives, and so I'm going to take his seat on this committee. So I'm looking forward to working with you. I will send it over to Hannah.
Thanks, Brandon. Hannah Balcom, Director of Leased Housing with the Cambridge Housing Authority. And I'll send it over to my neighbor, David, over in Boston.
Hey there, David Gleish, Chief Officer for Leased Housing and Admissions for the Boston Housing Authority. Hello, everybody. I'll pass it over to Jeff Davis.
Hello, everyone. Jeff Davis. I am the Deputy CEO at the San Diego Housing Commission and glad to be with you all. And let's see, I'll turn it over to Pam Taylor.
Hello, everyone. I am Pam Taylor, the new Director of HCV at King County Housing Authority. And I will turn it over, I hope, Cheryl Burns.
I'm going to try again. Can you hear me? Woo! I'm Cheryl Burns. I'm the Chief HCV Officer for the Chicago Housing Authority. And I've been so preoccupied. I'm not sure who didn't get introduced, but I'm going to try Andrea Lazaga.
Yeah, hi, sorry for joining late. I'm Andrea Lazaga, Director of Policy and Strategic Initiatives with Seattle Housing Authority. Glad to be here.
And I think we heard from Janine. Can we tag Janine?
Hi, I'm Janine Burrier. I'm very happy to be joining the group. I'm the Assistant Director of Policy Training and Outreach at the Santa Clara and City of San Jose Housing Authorities in lovely Bay Area, California. And happy to be joining the group. You're not going to see my video because it's noon here and I'm trying to eat lunch. So, but I will be listening in and contributing where I can without you seeing me. So is there anybody who still hasn't?
And we have Steve and Nicole.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Steve Holmquist. I'm a partner at Reno and Kavanaugh, and I am CLAFA's General Counsel.
Hi, and I'm Nicole Barrett with the MTW Collaborative.
Great, I think that's everyone.
Right. Thanks everyone for taking time, an hour and a half out of your day on the West Coast, your lunch time, to spend some time with us. As Janelle mentioned, we have a packed agenda. So we're going to move on to meeting logistics. So I'll hand it over to Janelle.
Great, thank you. So as I have to apologize in advance, you all got tons of calendar invites from me. We have set up our calendar for the tenant-based committee through July. So you should have all of those calendar invites. We're of course taking some time off for some holidays, but hopefully you're all able to join us. In the event that you're not, all of our sessions will be recorded like we're recording today. And we are also taking call notes and that we'll share on our Housing Is website. We realized at our last tenant-based call that we have file size limitations in trying to upload recordings. So we've transitioned over from Dropbox over to our Housing Is website. So we will take a couple of minutes. Hopefully, I know that a couple of people have gotten into the website and have started looking at some of our materials. But until we're used to using that platform for sharing information, I will continue to share agendas and any related meeting materials over email as well. So with that, I will take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, Maria, just doing a really quick demo. When I say really quick, it's really, really quick of the Housing Is website. So hopefully this works. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. And okay, of course I can't find it now. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's try that again. Here we go. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the Housing Is website. I'm going to go back to the home. This is the home page. It's very simple, housingiS.org. You'll go to that website. You'll sign up and create a profile if you don't already have one. If you do and you don't remember your password or information, just let me know. We can find that information for you, but you'll sign up. And then once you have gotten a profile, you'll come back to the main page and go to our communities. And there's plenty of communities that you can join, but for today's purposes, we're looking at the tenant-based housing assistance community. And I'm going to go ahead and log in under my contact, but to back up a little bit, so you go up to the top of the screen where it says communities, and you'll scroll down to the end of the page, nearly end of the page, under the tenant-based housing assistance community page, and you click on view community. Once you have created a profile, there'll be a different link here for you to ask to join the community. I'm already a member, so I'm just going to log in really quickly to show you all how to do that. So I'm logged in and it'll take us to our page basically. And this is where you can move this over, where you can see resources, like for instance, today's call notes, last meeting's call notes. The letter we sent over to HUD about CARES Act waivers has been uploaded. Information on a mobility webinar that's coming up that we're co-sponsoring, and then again, today's agenda. So here's where we will upload information. You can also, as a member of the group, post any information you think would be relevant for community members as well. So with that, I'm gonna stop there and then hand the mic back over to Maria. But again, if you have any questions or any challenges with accessing the site, feel free to email me directly.
Great. Thank you so much, Janelle. This is very useful and a great way to be able to share information. And thank you as well for being so organized. We didn't mind, at least I didn't, all of the meeting appointments. So we have that scheduled in advance and we can plan our schedule accordingly. So thank you, Janelle. Our next item number 3 is recent legislative and regulatory updates. So I'll hand it over to Sonia.
Okay, so I have some great notes from Janelle to walk through in terms of recent activities and just to give you a sense of what's going on here. We're in the midst of the grand reconciliation battle. It is sure to be a smaller bill than originally intended at the 3.5 trillion, closer to 2 trillion. They're in a process of cutting that bill down to size. As you may have read, the conflicting philosophies, some saying just trim everything, but keep all of those provisions in there, and others saying focus on the big items and fully fund them. So this is ongoing. I'll just note that Chair Waters of the House Financial Services Committee, who is a major author of the housing provisions, has been all out, all hands on deck to get her colleagues to sign on and to urge leadership to preserve the housing provisions. And as you know, from CLAFA, we've been getting a lot of emails about alerts. So this is critical the next week or two in terms of how this pulls together. And of course, we're also going to be facing the kick the can down the road syndrome from Congress in facing the debt ceiling and a continuing resolution again in early December. I will note that in terms of the FY22 appropriations bill, as you know, the House has already passed their bill. It included 125,000 new vouchers in there, incremental vouchers. The Senate bill should be released very shortly, we're told. We're told that it is robust, and in some cases, the numbers may be higher on the Senate side than the House side. We'll have to see that to believe that. So we're looking and we're hoping for to have that out before the CLAFA meeting at the end of next week. So we'll have more information about what FY22 is going to look like. Just in terms of care waivers, and we have made a full-blown attempt to convince HUD that this is needed, the extension of CARES Act waivers and broader waiver authority. OGC has told PIH that this HUD secretary does not have authority to extend the CARES Act waivers because it's tied to the CARES Act funding. So their reading is the secretary does not have authority to extend it past the spending of the CARES Act money. Furthermore, HUD was going to try, or PIH was looking at trying to get what they call a class blanket waiver from OMB, which would allow housing authorities to continue to operate under pandemic provisions. That does not seem to be fruitful, and it's not clear OMB is going to go along with that. So Plan C for HUD in terms of waivers is within their authority to consider individual waivers and thinking about a streamlined way to do that. So I don't have very good news on all of that front. And Janelle, would you like me to walk through the EHV working group also, or okay? So EHV has been uppermost on our mind, and we've been meeting with a lot of folks on this, and great appreciation to those who participated in the EHV working group meeting, which is now a subgroup of this illustrious group, to hone in on the EHV funding and implementation issues. And we had, we've got about 10 housing authorities signed up, and I think we're on a monthly schedule. Is that right, Janelle, for those calls? And those are really important to us because we're getting direct feedback from you on the ground in real time. And we have weekly calls with HUD. 1 week is with the full HUD complement of deputy assistant secretaries from various divisions in PIH. And then the following week, we have a small call with just the EDs of the industry groups and Dominique Blum. So we do have a number of opportunities to directly convey what's going on, and they do want to hear that. So these meetings are really important, and your feedback is really important. I think there is a consistent thread on slow referrals, big concern about meeting the MOU criteria that you've laid out and meeting the HUD timelines. And we've continued to raise this with HUD. They say that they are happy to work with housing authorities on a one by one basis to resolve this and work with the COC. Now that we're getting into the real run of show, a lot of incomplete applications, not being able to process just the work on what they're getting from referrals has not been sufficient in a lot of cases. And just the ongoing pressures in these major metropolitan markets about supply, availability, and landlord willingness. And many of you engaged in using bonuses and other landlord incentives where you have this flexibility under EHV. And then just what we're seeing nationwide on staff capacity, staff hiring, and being able to bring in to this volume. So those were the general questions. One continues to rattle around portability, the use of portability, particularly in areas like the Pacific Northwest where people are moving around a lot, and the portability of the service dollars and how that works. And HUD is, I think, has put out some guidance on that. And if that's not clear, you should definitely follow up with them. We're continuing to work with organizations that represent COCs. And we're also reaching out and working with groups that represent the federally qualified health centers, and one group, which is the Organization of Healthcare for Homeless. We think the FQHCs can be really important partners on services, and we have some of the health folks talking about creating a health home for voucher holders and for these folks. And I think that's something we really want to incorporate in our thinking about where is that service care and delivery post-occupancy that doesn't pertain to housing. Where is the ongoing commitment or accountability for service delivery? And we're hearing more from some health providers that, particularly around the FQHC model, that may be a good place both for a lot of resources coming through HHS, through the Administration for Community Living, for home-based health care and community services. So these are all things that we're hoping to tap in at the national level in these groups on building some partnerships, and also trying to get some of these resources earmarked for EHV voucher holders. And so I think that is kind of covers our EHV work. And I think, Janelle, back to you to talk about our work on the CARES Act waivers. We submitted a well, thank you all for responding to the survey if you did. And we put together, I think it was an 8 or 9 page letter to HUD laying out where the priorities were on waivers. So we will continue to push aggressively on that. And we're also have a legislative strategy, both on the reconciliation bill and the FY22 bill to broaden some of the waiver authority. Janelle, back to you.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to add one more thing related to the portability for EHVs. We have submitted a request to HUD directly to get some specific questions raised by King County resolved. And we were reassured that they would be in the next FAQs. But again, we're not quite sure when that's going to happen. So we're pushing to get more clarification on when those answers will come. So I'll share them as soon as we have any information. And some other recent EHV news. HUD has recently reached out to us indicating that there are some PHAs that would be eligible for the $100 EHV issuance reporting fee that do not have their lease data submitted in PIC. So if that's when it's about 103 PHAs is the last we got an accounting of that. So if that is you want to make sure that you're getting the funding that you work so hard to be eligible for. So please take a look at that information. And then we will also share some other updates related to EHV coming soon. So again, Sonia, thank you so much for thanking the groups. We had a really great response rate for our survey. I think it's really important that we share information with HUD on the utility of these waivers. And resoundingly, I'm not going to go through each one of the ones that we recommended. I did attach a copy of the letter that we sent to HUD to the calendar invite as well as to the email. So you have that as well. But the top three, I think it's most notable. 91% of our respondents indicated that they want to continue to allow self-certification as the highest form of income verification as a streamlining effort. And then the waiver to waive income verification for interim reexamination, that also got a very high response rate, about 82%. And then also something we've been asking for a while, I believe, is to waive the oral briefing requirement. That got in 67%. So we put in at least 15 to 20 more waivers that we recommended to keep on the open to housing authorities, at least through the expiration of the pandemic. Sonia already unfortunately shared the news about where we are with that, but we'll keep pushing and continue to provide information as well as we have meetings with HUD to provide the feedback on how these are, how they're really working on the ground. So thank you for participating in the survey. That's very helpful to my team to be able to speak intelligently to the challenges. So I appreciate that. All right, and I think next up on the agenda is an update on the Inspire demo. So I can do that real quick if you want.
Please do.
Okay. So we don't have too much news to add on the Inspire demo. The biggest thing here is that on September 28th, HUD issued a Federal Register notice extending the demonstration through April 30th, 2023, so they can continue to assess the improvements and the alignment of the inspection protocol. So we'll keep our finger on the pulse of that demonstration. Definitely, if you have concerns, if you are a site that's participating in that demo, please reach out to us and let us know so that we can continue to provide that feedback as well. And I believe that's all we had for updates. And definitely, Maria, if you want to ask, have time for questions, we can certainly do that as well.
Great. We do have actually time for questions. If it's okay, I'll start. Sonia, do you think it would be helpful if for the CARES Act waivers, if we reached out to HUD individually by PHA and gave example, requested maybe a formal request? Do you think it's too soon?
Well, that is a very good question. I'm going to have to think about that. I think the CARES Act waivers are extended to December 31st, 2021. I know that MTWs had to request waivers directly, and Nicole has been keeping track of that, I think. So we've got a good sense. That's the thing that HUD doesn't know about non-MTWs to the extent they're using them. I'm going to think on that, and we should, I don't know, Janelle, if you have a thought about that. I do think we're going to get into a mode of HUD having to approve directly. So giving them a sense of the volume of what they would have to deal with might be helpful from our side. And Janelle, thoughts on that?
I would agree with that. I think that, like I said, have to think on that one, because I do think that having your voice heard is very, very important. And that's partly why we did the survey. But I do think that we need to give a little bit of a beat before we see what HUD's response is, so that we can decide how we can advocate on your behalf. I do think there will be time for that, particularly when they start determining which waivers they're going to keep versus which waivers, or when they're going to start unwinding those. I think this would probably be more appropriate time. But I think that's why the data will be really helpful for us when we get to that conversation point. And certainly we would be happy to pull you all in if you're willing to do that rallying cry.
And, and since you've raised it, I think we should definitely raise it. As I said, we're on weekly calls with HUD about, the housing authorities have to do their planning. I think what HUD is anticipating is putting out guidance on what they're calling unwinding or returning to normal operations. So I think that one will give us an opportunity, what they're saying, what their plan is to do that. But I think also getting a sense, and so we're going back and forth about how to convey that to HUD in terms of what their volume is. So stay tuned for that. And I think we should test this with HUD also in terms of what might be useful for our case.
This is Andrea in Seattle. I'm wondering a couple things. One, if and definitely raising testing it out with HUD in general, I'm sure is the right way to go. But maybe I'm wondering specifically if there are certain areas like regulatory versus statutory, right? So within things that are regulatory, are there ones that we can focus on where they have more purview, for example? And then on the regulatory side, like we've already started talking with Pramila Jayapal's office about the community service requirement, because we would have liked for that to have disappeared a long time ago. And so also curious if that's something, this is a tenant-based committee, so it doesn't affect this particular group, but many of us have public housing too. So if there are separate, rather than a waiver strategy, but separate strategies to pursue some of the statutory activities or statutory issues.
Well, we have tried to do that in the reconciliation bill one around that funding. The authorizers who wrote it on the House side came back with just waiver authority around a few sections on Section 9 and rejected HUD's request for broad waiver authority for Section 8 and Section 18 and Section 9. We're making our case to the Senate side, but they don't seem very, we'll wait and see how obliging they are. I do think the specific ones that where we could get support, like the community service, that would not be subject to broad waiver authority from HUD, but basically eliminates the requirement, right? That's what you're suggesting. That's what the member would suggest, or to no longer make it mandatory or whatever, however it would be softened. There are other attempts like getting rid of the Faircloth Amendment that restricts puts a cap on the number of public housing units. So there are various attempts to do it. The question is, what are the vehicles going to be? We are going to be talking to the appropriators, given that their bills are going to be moving soon, we hope, and that the Senate will be talking about their bill. But other than that, we have not undertaken specific targeted address this, but given our failure to get further with HUD, I think that that's definitely what we're looking at in terms of legislative strategy. I will just also note the CLAFA board met with Secretary Fudge yesterday. We had a half hour with her, and one of the key issues was operational flexibility and what was needed, both the extension of the CARES Act waivers, because many are still in pandemic conditions, and also waiver authority around reconciliation spending, and waiver authority around partnership development and things of that nature. So I think we have got to build the case on the political leadership level with HUD because we don't have, I don't think we've got some strong allies in PIH. So I think that's another focus on Peggy Bailey and Richard Cho and some of the senior advisors in the Secretary's office, making an approach there on addressing some of these waiver issues.
Sonia, would you mind expanding a little bit on the partnership development waiver authority?
Well, we know that MTWs have developed a lot of partnerships. They've funded services and they've engaged in sponsor-based housing and other types of housing subsidies with providers. We also know on data sharing issues, we still have questions now from housing authorities who are not MTW or in some of our initiatives about data sharing with other departments. So data sharing, new housing models like sponsor-based housing. We're working with United Health on health initiatives in terms of service dollars and spending. So that set of kind of cross-sector partnerships and more flexibility to form those is sort of the general category, really making the case that the waiver authority that we're looking for, and I think really reinforced by what Janelle said, is making it easier for applicants and residents to interact with the system, right? The self-attestation, the waiver of the income verifications, to reduce the administrative burden on low-income residents that have enough burdens already. And I think that is a good constructive approach. And I think the building the partnerships also is to the benefit of resident and improving and providing services.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
So I just want to give everyone a heads up. We are having some back-end technical difficulties. So if for some reason the call drops, we will start it back up. So hopefully, fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
You didn't hang up on us, Jenna.
So, but and if we are out of time for this, then this conversation cannot happen. But so Sunya, when you're saying needing inroads or these needing Peggy Bailey and Richard Cho to have a better appreciation for this, are there specific requests that you can make of us, like, stories, data, what have you, whether it's now or in the future, to help with that?
Yes, I think the anecdotes or the specific impact on residents are really important. I think the survey went a long way in demonstrating how widely used they were and how effective housing authorities thought they were. But I think particularly around special needs populations, and there is a precedent here with EHV because the secretary is using waiver authority. They put more service dollars into the program. So there is a recognition on that side that housing authorities are going to need more flexibility, right, on landlord incentives to house this population. But why doesn't that apply to the rest of the program? Because you're dealing with the same challenges for your regular voucher holders. And that's what we were hearing so clearly from the EHV working group in competition with everybody out on the street looking for units. So I think how it impacts serving special needs, how it impacts reducing homelessness. It's Secretary Fudge is the chair of USICH, the Interagency Council on Homelessness. So this is a focus of theirs also. And I think demonstrating how those connections are important to get people permanently housed is really important in terms of the storytelling. Yeah. So yes, yes, and yes.
Great. Thank you, Sunya. Okay. Okay, so item number 4, discussion on voucher utilization. And so we had some questions that Janelle prepared for us, that some homework. And so first question, and Sunya mentioned this, and we're struggling with that too, is the utilization, the potential impacts, not positive, to the utilization of our HCV program as a result of kind of all hands on deck for EHV and units being utilized for EHV in the market by landlords. So just curious what your utilization rate is, and if you're HCB program is struggling or has started to struggle as a result of your work with EHB?
Hi, our utilization is about 83%. And it's too early to tell the impacts of EHV because we are ramping up on voucher issuance, but we haven't seen a lot of rentals coming out from that. So I'm not really sure yet what the impact is.
Thank you, Lillian.
Hi, this is King County. Oh, sorry, Janine, did you want to go first?
Go ahead. I'll go right after you.
Sorry, so King County Housing, we're at 90.7 and similar. We have one person that is leased up, so it's going to take a minute before we truly see the effects.
Thanks, Pam.
Are we talking about EHVs or are we talking about our regular vouchers?
We're talking about a regular voucher program and what utilization, if you're struggling with utilization in terms of, for whatever reason, if you could share that.
Yeah. We're at 95%. A lot of that is due to us cleaning out our 2006 waiting list. Finally, it's exhausted. And we're really seriously concerned about we have about 800 shopping vouchers on the street, and we're really seriously concerned about their ability to find something.
And Janine, about how long have those been on the street?
We give them 180, 120 with an automatic 60-day extension if they need it. So basically 180, 6 months.
And can I ask where are you on your payment standard?
We're well, the FMRs went down. We're not using the current FMRs. We're doing the area rent study. We are using the 2021, and our payment standards are fine. Our database for rent reasonableness is the problem. We're working very hard with the Go Section 8 to figure out what the issue is, but they don't seem to be accurate to what we're hearing is going on in the market.
Can I ask, is that for certain unit types or is that for across the board you're having?
It's across the board.
That's a great question. Has anyone adjusted their payment standards to be more in line with the market?
Well, we feel our payment standards are fairly in line with the market. I think our payment standard for a 1-bedroom is around 2,800. So that's pretty comparable to the open market here in Santa Clara County. But we're coming back with rent reasonableness of 2,600, and the owners are they're not accepting it.
How often does Go Section 8 do a rental survey for you all?
That's a good question. I thought that was like ongoing, but I don't have the answer to that question right off the bat.
So that might be something to check into. When I used to work with Fairfax County, they only did it twice a year for us. And that was a challenge to getting accurate data. So that might be something to look into your contract to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in Chicago, our utilization is 97.2 right now. We have had a problem with deceased tenant reporting. We've had a large number of single head of households, and we've had to terminate, and we're only receiving those updates every 2 to 3 months. So we've had a large number of them where the processing had to be done retroactively. So we're losing 2 to 3 months of HAP once we do those terminations. Also, I think like everybody, we weren't terminating families. And so we did start terminations in the late spring for families. So we have a large number of families that were non-compliant for different reasons, or zero HAP families that we were finally terminating. So we had a large number of terminations in the middle of the year. In addition to, I don't know what other people are seeing, but we have a lot of, we had over 200 port families absorbed in the last 3 months. So we're at 97.2, which, you know, it's not terrible, but we're used to being a little higher.
It's interesting. We absorbed all of our ports as well. So that's something that we may see happening more and more as PHAs are trying to increase their utilization.
Well, we are over leased, so if anyone wants to absorb from KCHA, let me know.
Let me know if Chicago has any. We'll do it for you.
Definitely.
Okay. Have you seen any major swings in your utilization in the past 6 months, either increase or decrease, or why? Has it been pretty stable? Have you seen drops?
Was that for me? Or
anyone?
Yeah, like I said, ours has been going down steadily since probably May of this year, because we started the year off with a utilization of like 100.1, and we're down now to 97.2. So it's been a steady decrease. We've had, like I said, we got a great number of absorptions. We're probably going to have to do a little absorbing ourselves.
Sure.
Ours has been going up slowly and steadily, and that's just because we've been working over the last year at exhausting our old wait list.
Brandon?
I was just gonna say, MPHAs, we're right around 97.5%, but we just emptied out our 2008 waiting list. And so all those vouchers, only the several hundred, or a couple hundred that are actually been issued from that batch, I think only 7 are, I think at the report this morning was 10 have leased up. So we'll see what happens with those from an expiration standpoint, but we've been tracking the expiration much closer, and that's actually been dropping. So we've not had people not be able to place the vouchers. It doesn't necessarily mean it's where they really want to be, but they have been able to place them. But we have not seen a swing in Minneapolis, and we're not anticipating the EHV to be highly problematic for us, because in Minneapolis, because of the amount of project-based housing that we've been supporting, and that other affordable housing developments, they've been focusing on families. There's a low family homelessness rate, and so the largest majority of the people they're going to refer to us are going to be singles. And so we've had new developments have trouble filling their single units and studios, and so yeah, we don't see it conflicting with our regular voucher holders right now.
Thanks, Brandon.
So in New York, our utilization is a lot lower than usual, but we're seeing a slightly upward trend now. So I'm hoping that continues, but we are focused on getting those numbers higher.
Great.
So in Boston, where we are right on the cusp of 100% utilization, I think the biggest thing we've noticed is just the dip in attrition over the past 18 months or so. And so that, our normal leasing success rate, we really have to consider our attrition rate dropping to be right on target.
Thanks, David.
In Cambridge, we're right around 100% as well. I mean, it's been, we were up at 100 before, so we've just been able to maintain okay. It's on our special purpose vouchers that our new mainstream vouchers that we're trying to ramp up. I don't have a sense for if the lease up success rate is changing. Our issues seem to be more on the outreach and getting people through the screening process. Just total lack of response. I do sense that there's, all of us in the area are issuing off our waiting list at the same time. So we're probably competing for the same applicants. So before they even get to the issuance and potential to lease up, it's even just getting in contact with them. I think the competition on that end is affecting things as well. And in a lot of cases, the same population as those that are going to be referred for the EHVs.
That's a great point, Hannah, and maybe something we can talk about at a future meeting is the special purpose vouchers and low utilization rates. We're seeing a lack of response as well for mainstream, and sending out. It's hard to gauge how many letters to send out, based on the response, and that all takes time. So our mainstream utilization is very low. Thank you. Are there any partnerships that you're working with, any partners you're working with in your community that have been assisting or that have assisted in your voucher utilization?
So in Boston, I have two, I have a number of different partnerships that have really helped utilization. And really the key here in Boston is housing search. We note that when housing search resources are brought to the table, that our success rate goes from about 70% all the way up to really the high 90s, like above 96, 97% voucher success utilization. So we have a supported housing program with Boston Public Schools for homeless families and BPS, and BPS, Boston Public Schools, brings housing search dollars and works with a nonprofit provider that works on that end. And as well, we've had a number of years partnership with the Massachusetts state shelter system, which runs all the family shelters in Massachusetts, and we target Boston displaced families that are in shelter. And again, DHCD provides the housing search resources there, which are just very helpful in terms of utilization rates.
Thanks, David.
And Minneapolis, the county, or the Hennepin County, which is where Minneapolis is in Minnesota, they've struggled with placing a lot of their disabled homeless singles. And so part of our agreement with them was that we would provide them with mainstream vouchers if they provided the housing search and housing stabilization. So they had to stay with them and be a point of contact through the first year of the lease. And they've shockingly been able to place them pretty quickly. So we allotted another group to them, and we'll probably do a third. But that's big for us. Is lately, if you want access to vouchers, then you have to have the housing search and you have to have the housing stabilization. And more places are willing to do that.
Thanks, Brandon.
Here in the Seattle, King County, and then expanding to Tacoma area and some places outside of Washington, there's an organization called Housing Connector, which the executive director is actually my former staff. So I'm super excited about the work that they're doing. What Housing Connector does is that helps support homeless families access housing, but that includes folks with vouchers. Is they work behind the scenes with organizations that do like housing search assistance to connect with landlords. And so they don't work directly with the clients, they work with the landlords and recruit landlords to get them to reduce their rental barriers, like their credit screening, their criminal, et cetera. And then they come in with kind of a promise, a guarantee with kind of like mitigation funds for the first year, and then also an agreement that the service organization that helps do the placement, that like provides the navigation services, will also be there with to respond to any client issues or tenant issues in that first year. But then the housing navigator has like a backup service, if you will. So if that nonprofit organization for some reason isn't able to come through, then the housing navigator has a backup service. And they actually, for the last year and a half in King County, have had more landlords and units than they have had tenants. So it's been
fantastic.
Yeah.
Andrea, do you know how they're funded?
the local chamber provides some of their, for startup, provided some of their overhead, and then the COC provides some of their funding, but I'd be more than happy to connect folks with Skelchum, the ED, if anyone's interested.
That would be great, Andrea. I would be.
Yeah, I'll send you
If you can share me that information, I'll upload it as well to our Housing Is website.
Okay, great. Just as another aside, they've also building on a previous partnership that Seattle had with Zillow. Zillow actually posts all the vacancies that they have on Zillow in a portal that the housing navigator, only the housing navigators have access to. So they get like early access to these units. Yep, I'll send the information to Janelle to share out.
Thank you.
You bet.
We've gotten a lot of, I think the most feedback from, we have, several hundred families that are searching with the voucher is they send emails asking for, they send me emails too, asking for help, and that they can't find a unit. And it stresses them out because they see, we provide that initial 60-day timeline for the expiration of the voucher. And, as much as we communicate that, that can be extended, please work with us. It's just very stressful for the families, and they're continuously asking for housing navigation search. So it's one of the things we're looking at using our, for us, our moving to work flexibility, because we were at 100% January 1st, and now we've dipped, is using, that difference in HAP payments that we're not spending to pay for housing navigation services. We did contract with the private, with the third-party provider for housing navigation services for EHV. So we're looking to utilize that same company for our tenant-based HCV program, but it would be great if we didn't have to pay for it. Great. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. This was really helpful. Sunia or Janelle, any other questions that you have of the team before we move on to the next item?
No, I would just say HUD is watching utilization very carefully, as you know, with the dashboard that they put together. They've sent letters to housing authorities who they feel have not, that their utilization is not adequate. I'll also say there are other folks who've been testifying in Congress that should we question whether housing authorities should be administering the voucher program if the utilization starts to drop. So I'll just say that, as you all know, that it is a focus of attention, and whatever we can do to increase it and to explain it is going to be helpful.
Thanks, Sonia. We also communicate to our field office. We have a call with them every month, and one of the topics is utilization. So we keep them in the loop and share, whatever data we have. And they have said that that's been helpful in responding to their regional director. Okay, so thank you. That was a great discussion. Our next agenda item is a discussion on FUP and FYI vouchers. And so how many of you administer either of these two types of vouchers? Okay, so we have a good group. And so what is your utilization rate in either of those two programs?
So at NYCHA, we administer about 440 vouchers, and we're at 100% utilization. Can I jump to like that at like the regulatory relief?
Of course.
Okay, so it's really more to reduce administrative burden. It would be helpful for HUD to have like a blanket we can convert at the end of the 36-month expiration, instead of having a process where we need to demonstrate that they were on the wait list and then we can, convert them to all other vouchers. So if they just state that we can do it, it would be a lot easier to convert them and reduce administrative burden on the PHA end. So that would be a wish list item for NYCHA.
CHA, our utilization is 97.6, and I would echo that sentiment. That is the biggest challenge for these vouchers, is the time limited nature.
I can say also that that's something that came up in this survey is it's wanting to be extended as well. So that's very helpful to know.
Or even if it's not extended, just allowing us, having somewhere in writing that allows us to automatically convert them to tenant-based if we have the voucher utilization. Right now, we have to go through this big process.
That's a great idea of being able to provide more, because of the partnership with Family Support Services.
We've traditionally been at 100% for our THUP program, between 98 and 100%. We recently got a new allotment of vouchers, and most of them are tied into an Urban Institute 3-year study. And that has actually slowed us down. And now we're at around 80% voucher utilization because getting the MOU, and going through the control group study and all of that has actually slowed down our referrals. So.
Thanks, Janine.
We are at 88% for our vouchers, and we just recently received 66 of the FYI. So one of our challenges, as everyone else, is the time limit on it, and especially living in King County, King County, it's very expensive. So to really expect them to be successful in an area where the rents are extremely high, and you have to double up in order to really afford to live here, there needs to be other methods to, like what was previously stated, to convert these to vouchers. So
I would ditto that as well.
Any other feedback on any challenges with utilization or suggestions for regulatory relief?
All right. We in Boston, we recently started getting FYI vouchers through the non-competitive method, and it's just it is very the program is very different than other programs in the sense that it's a so we get one referral, then we request one voucher from HUD, and it's just really not a practical way of working. We're used to just getting the funding and then finding obviously the bodies to fill it. I know that's because we went through the non-competitive route mostly, but it really is an arduous process for it's a lot of work for only a handful of vouchers. So I think that's something that could be revisited from the procedural standpoint.
That's a great point, Sonia and Janelle, and maybe why some PHAs may not have applied for those funds.
Yes, this came out of, this is not the typical way to do things, as you've noted. And this was kind of a Ben Carson special, if you will, that he worked directly with advocacy groups on folks who are aging out of programs, who went directly to him and have proposed using the tenant protection voucher pool for this. So I think your suggestion about how to pull it back into a more administratively efficient way to allocate them makes a lot of sense. I don't know what their volume is currently in terms of requests, but it's got to be a headache for HUD too to do this kind of retail, one by one approach. They supposedly can't provide them until there's a request for them, but your suggestion that if we can show we can use them or we have a population that can use them, could we get an allocation up front? But this has been a major concern about whether you really could serve people on this one by one basis with a request to HUD. But we will definitely take that back to HUD.
Yeah, I'm also curious, David, if you can talk a little bit more, if you've experienced any families that you sent the referral over and then by the time you actually get the voucher, they're no longer eligible, no longer interested. How have you, if you've experienced that, how has that been handled?
With the FYI, we have a FUP allocation and that's worked pretty well, just because that's a long-standing relationship. But with the FYI vouchers, just a little different. And like I said, we just got started, but that is, we know that's going to be an issue with one or two of the folks that were referred over just because of the timing, right? It's like they were interested, and then, 3, 4, 5 months passes and we finally get a voucher. And then, that might not be the case anymore.
That's really helpful. So it's taking 3 or 4 months to get the voucher?
Well, it did. Well, first, I mean, it's not all HUD. It took a good 60 days to get the voucher, but it took a little bit for us to work out our processes with DCF here in Massachusetts, and then figure out the service provider piece. And so there was, once we decided to dip our toes in, it was a lot more complicated than we anticipated it might be.
Yeah, our FYI are serving homeless, and actually it was taking HUD to get the ACC. Like I think it was close to 90 days. We submitted the email, and then it took about 60 to 90 days to get the approval. I want to say more on the 90-day mark. And we're working with the homeless former foster youth, so they disappear.
Okay, duly noted.
Great. Okay. Any last thoughts on this subject before we move on to our next one?
Hi, this is Jen Suri from New York City HPD. I'm sorry to have joined late. But on the regulatory side, the concept of service fees that's built into EHV would be wonderful to build into special purpose vouchers in general, whether they're mainstream or FUP. A lot of people need extra support, and if we could use that model and provide the funding, we've always advocated for flexibility to use for brokers fees or anything like that. But if there's an opportunity to push for service fees for special purpose vouchers, we definitely support that.
I think that's a great suggestion. And as we noted earlier, that this is a new model for HUD, recognizing that special populations need services. You need flexibility in negotiating with the landlord. You need landlord incentives. And even with that, it doesn't provide for the ongoing services you were talking about, so the post-housing move-in services. So yes, I think this will, what we're learning from you also on this is going to be very helpful in terms of how you're using. I'm very interested in the housing navigation services and the impact it's having on utilization, and how we think about that incorporated much more broadly into Section 8, into the Section 8 program.
Thank you. Agreed. Okay, our next topic is a discussion on the mobility activities. So I'll hand it off to Janelle to talk about the conference first.
Sure, thank you. So we are co-sponsoring the Mobility Works Conference this year. We're actually just got off a call earlier this afternoon, doing the final touches on the agenda. We have shared, I believe we shared in the conference webinar link in the meeting invite, but it is on our Housing Is website. It is free. I believe they are requesting donations, but it is free for any members that are interested in participating. And we're looking forward to a really good conversation. Some of our members will be presenting this conference as well. So hopefully you can make it. It's November 4th. It's an all-day virtual conference. So looking forward to seeing some faces.
Thanks, Janelle. Okay, so in terms of mobility related services, what services are available to your families, if any?
So in Chicago, we have a contract with mobility counselors. So they meet with families and they do housing search with them. They provide transportation to different units. They coach them on application or the interview and filling out the application. And those that are placed in a mobility area, and for us, that is a community area, with poverty levels below 20% and low violent crime, those property owners will receive, the family will receive a $500 grant that they can apply to security deposit or moving fees or whatever it is that they might need. So that's mainly what we provide in terms of mobility.
And Cheryl, is that for your HCV program?
That is.
And do you pay for that with your MTW funds? You use fungibility?
Yep.
And so have you seen positive outcomes as a result, for example, the $500 grant?
Oh, absolutely. So we have, in addition to that, we have incentive payments for new property owners in mobility areas that come into the program. So in addition to the first month's rent, they get an incentive payment of the overall contract rent. So if the contract rent is $2,500 and the HAP is normally $2,000, they'll get $4,500 from us that first month. And that's just for new owners. So we've seen an increase in new owners in mobility areas. We've also increased families that have elected to move to mobility areas by more than 25%. And our resident services division is tracking. We have a really good, and I don't know the numbers, and I apologize, but we have a really good rate of families staying in mobility areas, so they don't move there for a year. That's what we were experiencing initially, but now they are staying put because we have a lot of resident services that we offer to them, like job coaching, job search, benefits for them to go to community college. So people are able to stay and support their families in mobility areas with all of the supports.
And so Cheryl, the coaching and the searching, job coaching, searching, is that only provided to families living in the mobility areas?
That is only provided to families that actually elect to seek a unit in a mobility area. So they get all of these services. We have a different service that we offer just for regular voucher holders, disabled households. We have staff that provides housing locations. So we work with our mayor's office for disabled peoples. I think it's MOPD, I forget what it stands for. And we do a lot of outreach to owners that are making accessibility upgrades to their units. So our families have access to some of those features. So we do that as well.
That's great, Cheryl. You've seen better outcomes with your measures than we increased our payment standards in certain areas and to incentivize families to move to higher areas of opportunity. We've seen a 10% increase in moves, but 25% is very impressive. Great job. This gives me some ideas for EHV in terms of using a higher, maybe landlord, incentive bonus. And the $500 that you mentioned, that's a grant to the family?
Correct.
Great ideas. Thank you, Cheryl, for sharing. Any others?
I'll mention King County Housing Authority in collaboration with Seattle Housing Authority. We are going to be actually featured next Tuesday around the same time, about 12. So we're going to be featured on a HUD webinar regarding our creative moves to opportunity areas. So it's really interesting that this mobility came up. So if you want to learn more about our partnership basically with researchers and Rod Shetty, to look at the opportunity areas and how we work together as housing authorities and looking at families with kids under the age of 15 to move into our opportunity areas. For King County in specific, we have our payment standards are based by zip code because so different parts of our counties are so different and fluctuate. So we have done our payment standards per zip code, and we do offer a lot of assistance. We did a contract service. We outsource our contractor for our navigation services. So that's who provides all the service needs to get them into these units. And I mean, they're really successful in this program. And so now we're looking to expand the program outside of just the CMTO's tenant base. So we're looking to open up those opportunities. So we're in discussion about how that looks and how it's going to be funded.
Thanks, Pam. Would you be able to share the information on the webinar with Janelle?
Sure.
I was just going to ask that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Pam. We're looking forward to hearing more on that.
Hey, just one side note on the webinar, Janelle, we probably need to, it's for the grantees, I think.
Oh.
So I'm just, we just probably need to check with Allison just to make sure before it gets sent out. I would love it if everyone joined, but just want to make sure that Allison Bell is ready for a broader audience.
Ask Allison that I asked.
Yes.
I will do that.
We'll say it's okay if Maria comes, right? And how could she say no to that?
Tell her I said hi too. Okay, any others? These are great. These are very useful. I know they're useful for CLAFA, but they're useful for us as well.
So in Boston, we're a non-MTW agency, so we don't have quite the funding dollars to throw at mobility, but we have 3 full-time staff. One is a director of landlord recruitment and housing search. One works directly with families that indicated interest to move what we call expanded choice communities, similar to what Cheryl was mentioning as mobility areas. And we have one person that just works specifically on landlord recruitment. And we also we have a software that we've developed that's really a neighborhood search tool. And we're continuing to develop that software that it really overlays payment standards with communities and gives like background on the communities, but also overlays public transportation routes as well. So it can really kind of, when the family uses that as a search tool, it can kind of let them pick, well, what kind of neighborhood do I want to live in? And then we'll give them a number of suggestions that could be affordable to them with the voucher in the Boston area. And so we continue to kind of tweak that tool, and we have and we found for the BHA that's kind of been something that we're able to build on rather than hiring, I think, the number of staff that we would really need to have an effective mobility counseling program to serve all of our voucher holders.
That's great, David. Was that something that was developed in-house, this software?
So what my colleague here at the Housing Authority, Nick Kelly, he's currently here as a senior policy advisor. He was at MIT when we started developing this, and he was working kind of as a fellow at the BHA, and he has his dissertation, and he did his PhD in fair housing laws. And so we worked with him very closely on developing the software and fundraising for it, and now it's BHA IP, but we have a company, a web developer called Xavia. It's a B corporation in Philadelphia that's working on the final product.
Is this something that you think they would be open to sharing, probably at a cost, with other PHAs?
Yeah, so we're trying to, we've kind of had some of those discussions around in our area. I think we're also thinking about how does this scale across the country. I mean, I think it's easy for us to do it here. Cambridge shares our payment standards, so they would benefit from the tool, but other housing authorities in the area that don't share the same payment standards would not necessarily benefit. So we have to figure out how to build different versions depending on the payment standards in the various jurisdictions. And then, scaling up all the community information, it's quite some work once you get outside of Massachusetts, but it's something we're certainly thinking about.
Thanks, David. Does it include the school information, like greatschools.org information as well?
we grade on the site. It gives community rankings for schools, for safety, public safety, and also transportation. And then it's the thing about schools. I mean, some of this, the tool became a little bit political here in Boston. You know, as we think about issues of opportunity and mobility, we certainly didn't want to get into calling Boston a non-opportunity area. So there's a number of different issues that we're navigating, that we navigated there, to really kind of figure out how to deal with the schools issue. In Boston, we have school choice, so really folks can go to any one of the neighborhoods in Boston, no matter which zip code they lived in. And some schools are better, some communities are more safe than others. So that was definitely, we really had to thread the needle with some of those issues with the city and internally as well. So
Great, thanks, David.
David, I'm gonna reach out to you. I'm so sorry. I'm going to reach out to you offline so that we can talk a little bit more about that. So we are actually participating on a research panel, a HUD Sprint study right now. That's actually bringing together Google and Amazon and all the big tech leaders, asking very similar questions to what you guys are sounding like are figuring out on the PHA level. So I'm definitely going to reach out to you and see if there's some synergies we can find there.
That's great.
Great, thank you.
And can I just I can't hold myself back from saying it from the time that I spent with Raj Shetty and Nathan Hendren and all those folks on CMTO and their research, that one of the things that really stood out in our conversations and our pushback about like what makes an opportunity area is related to schools, and that a quote unquote good school and a good school for low income kids and a good school for low income kids of color are not necessarily the same thing. So I would just really caution folks about things like greatschools.org and other really simplistic measures.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, we were very careful about which metrics. In Massachusetts, that's another thing that makes the tool that would be something difficult to scale, because each state has its own way of tracking data as related to schools and performance. And in Massachusetts, there's a very robust set of data that allowed us to pick the appropriate variables to show which schools would be appropriate for some of our voucher holders.
Very cool.
Thanks. Okay, so this is great conversation, but unfortunately we have 11 minutes left. So we're going to move on to item number 7, working with CLAFA policy and research. So Janelle.
And I'm going to be very fast because I want to give as much time as possible to hear from you all. So I'm new to CLAFA. I'm not new to the industry. So some of you I have had the opportunity to work with in the past. But I'd love to know more about what you're working on, particularly who in your agency are dealing with policy and research issues. And so I will be reaching out. I'll probably start with our tenant-based committee because that's the lowest hanging fruit, to set those appointments, to kind of do a meet and greet session and to talk more about how we can work together. Some of you have already done that, but I'm looking forward to learning more. So with that, I'm going to leave that. So just so you know, that's what's coming forward shortly.
Great, thanks, Janelle. So don't block Janelle's call. Okay, item number 8. This one's fun. What's happening in your community?
Can I jump in and just say what's happening in my community?
Sure.
Project-based vouchers is a hot topic. As I said, we had our meeting with the secretary yesterday, and particularly loud were the California housing authorities saying we're desperate for more project-based vouchers. Of course, Doug Guthrie in LA and dealing with homelessness issues. We've had feedback from members. We're pushing up against our cap. We need more flexibility on the cap. Dominique Blum's response was, nobody's pushing up against their cap, and this is not a problem. And I'm going to go check the data, but what we see in PIC is people are not closing in on their cap. So others responded that, but we've got a lot in the pipeline that may not be reflected in PIC. And so we're trying to get to what's really going on project-based vouchers. We understand there's a difference between whether you're putting it into a non-PHA owned or managed property versus putting it into your own property, which may be more development focused in terms of whatever agreements you may have directly with landlords. We think it's a really important tool for both preservation and development. If there are continued increases in vouchers, we want to make sure that we maintain the flexibility on project-based vouchers. So we're trying to get a handle of whether you touch project-based vouchers. Is that more on the development side? Are you keeping an eye on that? And so that just another question I want to throw out. That's what's happening in my community.
Well, I do wonder if folks are following the notice and excluding replacement units.
Well, Steve Holmquist is going to be looking very carefully at what the caps, because there are a number of ways to be exempt from the cap, and that's replacement units for public housing. I think the pressure we're hearing from housing authorities is on homelessness and special needs, where project-based project basing makes more sense given the special needs population. So we want to just get to some of the actual numbers. Where are people experiencing that pressure, and where are you feeling it?
Yep. So this is Steve, and I am listening. Andrea, you make a good point. I wonder that too. People, I think, generally are not aware of how broad some of the HOTMA exceptions are, especially as to formerly federally assisted housing. So we want to make sure that's happening. And I think, Sonia, you'll agree, we'd also kind of like to hear some additional ideas, if to the extent there is a need to expand it further in the statute, kind of what particular uses or types of projects would you want us to pursue? I think, one pretty narrow idea, but, potentially very useful idea is to exempt permanent supportive housing to deal with the homeless issue that Sonia was talking about. But, that might not be enough for everybody. Maybe there's something a little broader. One thought is that, HOTMA did provide an exemption from the project cap for units where supportive services are offered. They don't even need to be accepted. They simply need to be offered. Maybe there is a possibility of expanding that to the program cap as well. As long as you're doing housing and services together, why not exempt that from the program cap, not just the project cap? But
well, I thought HOTMA gave an extra 10%. So it's not a full exemption, but HOTMA gives an extra 10% for like service enriched units like PSH or serving homeless. So I don't know if folks are taking that into consideration.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell you what, I will go back and read HOTMA and the notice. Maybe this group,
I'm familiar with this, like, even though we actually use MTW, but Seattle has, we have about 4,000 project-based units, and that's not with RAD conversions or anything. That's just project basing our regular tenant-based vouchers. So it's something we pay attention to. And about 800 of those are like replacement vouchers from, like Hope 6 redevelopments and stuff. So we still have about 3,000 units that are pretty much, the vast majority of those are targeted towards homelessness. They're with partner providers out in the community. And so, with, and your special, from my understanding from HOTMA is they exclude VASH and no, not even VASH, just project-based, the project-based VASH allocation and RAD. So your special purpose vouchers count in your numerator and denominator. So it's pretty hard to bump up against your allocation unless you're small. But
So Hackla thinks they're bumping or about to bump. So
Yes.
we'll revisit this, make sure, we're all on the same page as far as current law and regulation. And then kind of revisit, well, to the extent there are issues, what's the best way to approach it?
Yeah, and I think for Hackla and some other California housing authorities, they've been getting project room key and home key funds and other local funds that don't have matching subsidies to them. So I know Doug's Dilemma is getting subsidies attached to kind of the capital and acquisition funds they're getting. And project-based vouchers, is the tool. And of course, increasingly, King County, we know they have a very robust acquisition strategy using project-based vouchers also. So we'd like to know if you are remotely near your cap, how you think about your cap, and do you have problems bumping up against your cap? Anybody else who has been thinking about this or worried about it?
It's not the 20/30% cap that we're concerned about. It's the number of actual vouchers that we can continue to utilize we've got so many in the pipeline that are going to be leasing up over the next year, 2 years. And the cry in the community is for more. We need more. And so, I get it. But it's like our EOP rate is also slowing down. And so we're having that constant projection, like, can we afford to issue more PPVs knowing that they're gonna, lease up in the next, 2 years. And so trying to keep that figured out in our heads.
Right. I think that's really the point. What's your pipeline in terms of what you can absorb and what you might be able to absorb, and where you're getting other pressure from state and localities, in terms of other investments. So, okay, sorry, took up a lot of airtime, but it's a hot topic.
It is, especially here.
Jenny, I'm really curious, and if others have any challenge, you said tracking in your head, if you have any actual mechanisms for tracking future voucher use for PPVs, I think that would be helpful to share as well.
Okay, we'll share with that, Janelle. Great, thank you. I have two things I wanted to share under what's happening in your community too. I like, Sunya, when you say ripples of hope. So stealing that, our vaccination rate after only 2 weeks of a vaccination incentive and weekly testing requirement for those that were not vaccinated went from 29% to 59%, and still climbing. So that was good. And the number of cases in our offices has drastically reduced as well since we started the weekly testing. EHV we launched last Monday, and after 6 days we have 128 referrals, and we have 455 vouchers. So I'm
jealous.
We got so many. It's been a tough road to get to launching, but I think all the legwork that we did with our COC and our partners is hopefully paying off. So thanks. Any other things to share in your community? Okay. So we are at time. We're at 1:30 or 4:30 p.m. Depending on where you are. So it's late lunch right now for some of us on the West Coast, or almost dinner time. So I'll hand it over for, I just want to say thank you to everyone. I know this is an hour and a half of your time, but it's extremely beneficial for us as colleagues, and also for CLAFA to be able to provide this feedback to them. So I'll hand it over to you, Sunya and Janelle, for any closing comments.
Thank you to Marie for running a very tight ship here, Maria, and getting us through the agenda. And again, this is enormously helpful to us on the staff level, working with the Hill and HUD folks, getting this input from you.
Saying thank you as well. And I look forward to our next meeting, which everyone should have an invite for. If you don't, let me know.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone.